Hello, everyone, and welcome to Politics is Sexy. Joining me, as in every week, Ed Rombach, currency advisor, Rich Rubino, a columnist with the Huffington Post and a political author, and Tom Farmer, formerly with CNN and former executive director of Face the Facts USA. Hello, gentlemen, on a snowy, cold, frigid day here in New England. How are you guys doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Esther and guys.
All right, lots to cover. We've got Obamacare. Most of it is now in full effect. Meanwhile, Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor makes a late-minute decision. And what do the Obama administration and the GOP have in common? They both have a lot of work to do in 2014 to get the public back on its side. We're also going to talk about Duck Dynasty, Martin Bashir, Melissa Harris Perry, and much more. But let's start out with Obamacare. And Tom, mixed numbers on the federal enrollment numbers, as well as how many the state has enrolled. Your overall feelings about how this has gone post the website debacle.
Well, it's like watching a balloon lose air, you know. Apparently, there was a late surge of sign-ups. People spent their Christmas Eves attacking the healthcare.gov website instead of stuffing stockings and wrapping presents, which is kind of sad. But you're also seeing the thing sort of suffer a death by 1,000 small cuts. The decision by Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor late New Year's Eve to stay the mandate that requires religious organizations to purchase coverage that includes contraceptive care is sort of emblematic of the kinds of uh-ohs we're going to encounter over the coming months as these mandate things turn out to be a lot more fraught and harder to run in practice than they seem when you're writing legislation in an ivory tower. That and the demographic puzzle, which is that the people who are signing up tend to be the old and lame and infirm, the people who are going to cost the program money. We need young invincibles to sign up, and the more bad press this thing gets, the less apt they are to do so. So I don't think there's going to be this sudden renaissance for Obamacare and this sudden global realization this is the best thing since Pop-Tarts in 2014. I think it's going to continue to yield uh-ohs and signs of trouble as the year unreels.
But Tom, isn't the Sotomayor issue null and void anyway? Because the group that she was exempting, the Catholic group that she was exempting from the Obamacare, was, according to the White House, already not supposed to be under the Affordable Health Care Act, not mandated under the Affordable Health Care Act. So I pose this to all of you guys. Why come up with this last-minute religious tone decision?
Go ahead.
Well, I have a theory on that, and I'm going out a little bit on a limb for it, but sometimes it's worth to go out on a limb because, after all, that's where the fruit is. But it came to me as something of a surprise for Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor to take this tack on the contraceptive coverage. And maybe the wise Latina was hinting and sending us a message that Democrats are possibly vulnerable on this issue among Hispanic voters who tend to be culturally conservative on some issues like this. Hispanic Americans have one of the highest fertility rates in North America, and Hispanic women are about 1.3 times higher than the fertility rate of non-Hispanic white women. That said, fertility rates for Hispanics have fallen since the Great Recession at a faster pace than the rest of the population. But I think there's some there.
But Ed, you got to remember, this is simply a stay. I mean, a huge case hasn't necessarily come up here. This is more or less just a stay toward a religiously affiliated organization, not directly a church, by the way. This is where it kind of gets the gray area. For example, does a college which has a religious affiliation, a Catholic college, for example, would that count? It's not directly a church. How religious is it? That type of thing. But as I say, this is simply a stay. This is not. I think in the scheme of things, this is going to be a very, very de minimis part of this whole entire healthcare drama. And I think that I don't think a year from now we'll really even remember this day occurred.
Rich, I don't know. It's like pulling a sweater sleeve. You know, the more you pull, the more cases you get. And before long, what used to be a sweater is a pile of yarn on the floor, and the cat's all tangled up in it. I don't think that it's necessarily de minimis at all. I think it may be the tip of a very big iceberg. And it's not lost on me that Sotomayor is perhaps the most liberal justice we have on the bench, the one who might be most apt to defend this kind of blanket social engineering experiment. And yet she was the one who triggered the what would Scalia have done? You know, we're going to find out in the next 6 to 12 months how far this thing goes. Supreme
Court justices are a weird breed. Remember, John Roberts, who was nominated by George W. Bush, was the one who ruled that that the Affordable Care Act was constitutional. He was the deciding vote. He wrote the decision for kind of different reasons, but as I say, Supreme Court justices can be somewhat different. I know Dwight Eisenhower once said that they asked him, well, who his two his biggest mistakes were, and he said, I've got two of them. The two he nominated to the Supreme Court because they didn't turn out to be as conservative as he had hoped. George H.W. Bush certainly, I think, would want to take back the nomination of David Souter, for example, because he didn't turn out the way he wanted. Once they're on the Supreme Court, they're basically lifetime. The actual wording of the United States Constitution is during good behavior. So, I mean, they don't have to respond to the voters. So they can theoretically, ideologically to transmogrifate as much as possible and not have to respond to the voters.
But you guys, I mean, she is the most liberal, and she is a Hispanic. And do you think this was sort of a political move, showing to the Hispanic demographic that is socially very more conservative than mainstream Democrats, that this Affordable Health Care Act is actually good and will protect their some of their social norms or social preferences?
I think it would be wrong and unprecedented for a Supreme Court justice to send a race politics signal and pull the ripcord on a mandate, however slim, on that basis, especially with the high drama that accompanied it on New Year's Eve as she's in Times Square, going out there to drop the ball and join a kick line. She stops to sign this stay. This is pretty heavy stuff. It's not racial politics. It's the degree of difficulty that comes with actually implementing a law as sweeping as this, and the sort of unanticipated wrinkles that come up when social engineers run up against the real political landscape, the real legal landscape.
Yeah, there's really no evidence that that electoral politics was directly involved, or whether it was constitutional.
Okay.
Really, no one knows what her psyche is.
All right, take that back. Ed, final word on Obamacare, and then we move on.
Well, all I would say is that if Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor was sending a message, a race-based message, and she's the one who described herself as a wise Latina, then it was a subtle message. And I think it at least gives her enough plausible deniability to say, oh, well, that's not what I really meant.
Okay. All right. On that note, let's move to one of my favorite things, the quick go-round of the top stories of 2013. Wait, let me guess. Snowden and Obamacare will be up there. I know it. But I want to hear, in order, which one, and a third one that I hope will surprise me. Let's start out with your first one. You each have 30 seconds. Tom Farmer, your number one story and why. Go.
You know what my number one story is. It's Edward Snowden and the unraveling of the secrecy state on the front pages of every newspaper in the world. You could not have asked for a more technologically, culturally, or politically calamitous story than the Snowden leaks, and I don't think anything else comes close.
Yeah, so it's like the gift that keeps on giving in the news cycles. Rich.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing to dispute about that. I think Edward Snowden, he went from relative obscurity to a virtual Time Man of the Year. I don't know what else you can, or to a runner-up anyways. I don't know what else you can say. He's really exposed the national security state, and he's really kind of created this dynamic between the administration, kind of the establishments of both parties, against the libertarian right and the progressive left.
Okay, Ed Rombach.
Well, I put the Obamacare story at the top of the list because it is the story, I think, that has the potential to create a shift to the Republicans in the Senate in the upcoming elections. 2014 is going to be rough sledding for the Democrats, and that's a very big story, especially going into the presidential elections in 2016. Number two, I would put Edward Snowden.
Oh, wait. Okay, so now we go number two. Ed, you start.
Okay. Recently there's been talk of an editorial today in the New York Times, saying that Snowden should be given amnesty. And I think Snowden should agree to come home and face felony charges for espionage and theft on the condition that NSA Director James Clapper face prosecution for lying to Congress. All right, some claim that Edward Snowden broke the law by stealing classified secrets, and they call him a traitor for hiding away first in Hong Kong, now in Russia. But I ask you, what's the higher law? The Patriot Act or the Fourth Amendment? And beyond the Fourth Amendment, if you don't feel safe and free to speak your own mind in letters and transcripts and on the phone, if you have to wonder what you're going to say if the NSA is listening, then are you really free? Do you really have freedom of speech? So then it's a First Amendment issue.
Okay. Rich, number 2 story of 2013.
Yes, I'd have to say, really, I guess you call it the libertarianization of American politics. Go back to the 1990s when Bill Clinton was president. Remember, in 1996, the one issue where he was really vulnerable on was the war on drugs. Republicans were making the case, essentially, that Bill Clinton had not done enough to fight drugs. The party of small government was also the party at the time of more money to fight drugs overseas, to fight drugs here, for tougher penalties, mandatory minimums. You don't see any of this anymore, for example, in the drug issue. Now both the Democrats and Republicans have kind of come to a realization that perhaps treatment is a better option, and that perhaps there's nothing you necessarily can do to prevent people from inhaling.
You think this wave is going to stay around, Rich?
Yeah, I do, and I think that also you see the gay marriage, for example. By the way, on marijuana legalization, in 1961 there was a Gallup poll, 12% of the population supported marijuana legalization. Today, you have essentially, it is a majority opinion, it is the consensus opinion that marijuana, not only for medical purposes, but for recreational purposes as well, should be legalized.
It sounds like it's going really well in Colorado. As Tom Farmer pointed out last week in one of the best laws, Tom Farmer, number 2.
It's got to be the government shutdown and the Tea Party's high watermark in the form of the Ted Cruz filibuster and subsequent national outrage over the derailing of the nation's business by a small minority band of all-or-nothing zealots. The Tea Party performed the amazing trick of making themselves national villains at a time when the Obamacare rollout was in a position to destroy the Obama administration for the next couple of years. Amazing that they were able to snatch what could have been a chance to make valuable political hay out of the jaws of victory and create the mess they did.
Hey, I guess they can both say they have 1 point on each side. Rich Rubino, 3rd story.
Yes, I'd have to say the Obama precedent. By the Obama precedent, I mean running for president basically as soon as you get to the United States Senate. It was once a kind of outlandish theory. You have to go there, you have to get experience. Now that's no longer the case. Ted Cruz, in his first year as a freshman United States Senator, a former insurgent, is basically now in some polls 2nd or 3rd place, with Rand Paul as well right up there. And they're both freshman United States senators. They both came from political obscurity, came to the United States Senate, made their name, not necessarily by legislating, but essentially by increasing their bona fides with their constituency. In Rand Paul's case, the Libertarian Tea Party. In Ted Cruz's case, both the social conservatives as well as the Tea Party. But it really is an amazing phenomenon. The Senate is no longer a place for legislating as much as it's a place for some people, anyways, to really begin a presidential run. It's really changed the whole dynamics of this.
Maybe Chris Christie should run for Senate. Ed Rombach, number 3.
Okay, number 3, whether or not the Fed will taper or not taper. In congressional testimony, Fed Chairman Bernanke has said over and over again that QE asset purchases is the equivalent of the Fed pressing the pedal to the metal in order to keep long-term interest rates low in order to support the housing market. And that tapering is not the same thing as tightening monetary policy, or what the Fed does when it raises interest rates. It's merely taking the Fed's foot off the pedal a bit. I think otherwise, though. I think instead it's more like hitting the brakes on an icy road with the potential to lose control of the car. So, if the Fed has had its pedal to the metal over these past few years, then it's only been spinning its wheels because the economy is really not going anywhere fast. In a nutshell, QE has been ineffective.
Okay, so I'm surprised you guys, no one mentioned Syria and hundreds of children and people being killed by, by poisonous gas or whatever it was. I'm surprised you guys didn't mention some of the overseas stuff, but
some of us only got 2 stories, Esther. You know, I thought we were doing 3.
We're only doing 3, but you're right.
Well,
but
I only got to say 2. So
okay, I should have said 2 because I knew the top 2 would have been. What I should have done next week. I'll do this is name the bottom 5.
I will say, though, that the Syria part does add into the libertarianization narrative of this country. You saw record low support for the intervention. Just going back to the 90s, for example, it was nearly even when he talked about, for example, going to the Balkans. Can you imagine if Kosovo were to happen today, how low the poll ratings would be for intervening, or the Balkans? Yet we did both of those in Bosnia as well in the 1990s. So there's really been a transmogrification here.
Okay,
absolutely. And for the record, the third most important story is the stock market run and the fact that the market finished up in the 27-28%. You couldn't ask for a more dramatic depiction of the haves versus have-nots problem in this country.
That's part of the Fed QE story.
Yeah. Agreed. Okay, we're going to go to convince me your political or economic prediction for 2014. What are we going to be talking about next year? Ed Rombach, let's start out with you.
Well, President Obama is strategically weaker than at any time since he became president. So will he recover by trying to reach out to Republicans and working with them? I think there's very little evidence to support this view, but it wouldn't hurt the president if he held out an olive branch to the other side with a request to help him fix the Affordable Care Act. By using some of the Republican suggestions that were advanced, when the legislation was being crafted, but was ignored by the administration and the Democrats. So more likely, though, I think he will continue to engage.
So that's what we're going to be talking about next year, is olive branches being given to each other both ways.
You ask, what can they do? What can they do to work together? I don't think that they will do that. That's what they could do. But I think that's much more likely that the president will continue to engage in a combative frontal assault with the Republicans in the permanent campaign method that he has become famous for.
Okay, I thought I did say that we're doing convince me, but if we're doing the change, I did say convince me, so save that convince me for later. But I do want to hear Rich Rubino, what political news or economic news will we be talking about in 2014?
Well, we're in the election. This is the election industrial complex. What will we be talking about? Elections and more elections. There's really one year. It's the first year of a presidency where elections are somewhat on the back burner. The second year, it's all midterms. This year, it's going to be the midterms. Everyone's going to be talking about, is Barack Obama, is Barack Obama a liability? Is he an incubus? Whatever. That's basically what this entire year is going to be about. We're going to be basically talking about how the Tea Party, for example, how the Tea Party right is doing in terms of trying to dislodge certain incumbents. Watch the Mississippi Senate race, watch the Tennessee Senate race, for example, and also watch John Boehner's congressional district. They're going to be, the national organizations are going to put in a lot of money to try to get Tea Party members to dislodge incumbent Republicans in safe Republican states. I think that's going to be some of the talk, but we're in a time when there's more talk about elections on the news sometimes than there is what a politician actually does once they assume the office. It's all about getting to the office, and then once you're there, it's how do I maintain the office.
Yeah, scary. Tom, go ahead.
Did he say electoral industrial complex?
Yes.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
That's line of 2014.
Eisenhower is spinning in his grave, but it's true. It's true. All right, you want a prediction from me? I'll give you a straight-up prediction. The Republicans are going to take back the Senate this November. It's going to be about 53-47 or 52-48. I won't go state by state, but I'll tell you this. The Tea Party challenges that are coming up against guys like Cornyn and McConnell are going to be unsuccessful. The Obamacare unraveling and the continued income inequality debate in this country is going to work against against Obama. He doesn't have a response to that. He's not going to reach out and give him a knowledge branch. He's going to continue to campaign and make soaring speeches, and it's going to cost him. You're already seeing Democrats up for re-election backpedaling as fast as they can from Obamacare. It's not going to be enough. The worm is going to turn on dissatisfaction with the health care plan as it stands 10 months from today, and it's going to be the undoing of the Democratic majority in the Senate.
Okay, I'm not sure about your prediction about the Obamacare, but I do agree that that's going to be the Senate will go Republican, but the most talked about, I agree with you, Rich Rubino, tonight. You convinced me. It is what is it? Election
industrial
complex. Yeah. Write that down. That's good.
I should patent that. I'll write it down.
Write that down. All right. Now, we've stayed away from this, but okay, let's talk about Duck Dynasty, the Robertson, getting off of A&E, then coming back on. Now they're out with a new camouflage gun line. But there's been a number of these types of instances with Alec Baldwin, with Martin Bashir, Melissa Harris Perry. The PC police seem to be out full force, or what are your thoughts? Tom Farmer, you come from a TV background. What's your take on all of this?
You know, in these dramas, you can't tell who's stupider, the idiot on television who says these things or the people who police them and try and take them down. When the right wing does it, when something that has borderline intolerance to it, like the Robertson Duck Dynasty remarks occur, the left goes berserk. And then when the left does it, you know, when Martin Bashir says rude things about Sarah Palin or Melissa Harris Perry makes fun of Mitt Romney's family, which are both indefensible remarks culturally, that they come around grudgingly to the idea that perhaps maybe these people should say they're sorry. You can't legislate morality. You know, the market, the information marketplace is going to legislate morality by watching or not watching these people. And the fact is that when people say outrageous stuff, more people watch. So the tactic didn't work because we could all use a more civil, less coarse, less unpleasant dialogue in this country. And for the record, I think that what Martin Bashir said is just as repugnant as anything the right wing can uncork.
Yeah. Rich, do you think this is a freedom of speech issue?
Technically, well, yeah. I mean, you do have the issue. Well, I mean, it's freedom of speech to the extent that that essentially they are saying something on on public airwaves.
Yeah, but Rich, this is a company. You know, can a company regulate free speech? Congress can regulate free speech.
Congress, I mean, I'm talking a very theoretical level. You have the FCC and all this other stuff. But, I mean, this is really why Howard Stern, I think, went over to satellite radio. Because on satellite radio, you really can say essentially whatever you want. And there is no kind of PC police to kind of check on what you're saying. And, these kind of artificial outrages on the right and then the artificial outrages on the left. I mean, when I say it's free speech, I mean, these are the public airwaves. And but the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law, basically abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. But of course,
Congress, not a company.
Yeah. Right.
Not a business.
Right. And of course, the airwaves are technically public. So I mean, it's a very technical. The answer is technically yes, but for all practical purposes, no.
Okay.
It's not at all technical. If it's your private concern, then you can regulate what you say in it. You don't have... Look, I used to screen phone calls for Larry King Live on CNN years ago, and we would have callers call up and try this line. You're denying me my freedom of speech because you won't put me on the air so I can yell four-letter words and scream for, want the Nazis to take over the post office or some insane point of view. And the answer is, it's my show. Get your own show.
Exactly.
Yes, you have the right to say any of this stuff in the privacy of your own house or down on the town square, but you don't have a right to go on television, to go to a private newspaper and say anything you want. The people who run the shop have the right to edit it. That's a fundamental right. So it's not a free speech issue.
Well, the government too, though, because there are words you can't say on television. Well, but there are words that the government will regulate that you are not allowed, like the 7 words that George Carlin said that you are actually not allowed to say on a public airwave. So
right, with rare exceptions.
Give me 3 examples.
When Poppy Ortiz said rapping City on television after the Boston bombings, nobody thought too badly about that. Those things are situational. When that chick had a wardrobe malfunction at the Super Bowl, that was considered a huge issue.
I want to know 3 examples of what words you can't say on TV, Rich.
I'll tell you off air.
Not on here.
I'll tell you off air. But
Ed Rombach, how much of a responsibility do those commentators, those hosts, have in what they say in those programs, and setting an example and being morally ...
Well, Dave, under the First Amendment, they have the right to say whatever they want, and their employer has the right to fire them if they don't like the way they're representing their company. Tom's absolutely right. It's not a First Amendment issue. It's not a freedom of speech issue. It's an employee-employer relationship issue.
But what responsibility?
And all of them ended the same way. And interestingly enough, there's only 2 networks involved, right? Am I correct? CNN and
no, just
MSNBC.
MSNBC and is it A&E or AMC? I guess it's A&E.
Oh yeah,
Dynasty thing. Yeah.
Okay, so wake me when this happens on Fox, right? So sure, but they can say whatever they want. The controversy, Congress passed, and the president detained indefinitely, incommunicado.
Much sexier to a lot of people. But I want to go back to my thoughts about saying these types of things, all networks, in not discriminating and not saying stupid things.
It's highly situational. Howard Stern has a different set of responsibilities than Brian Williams. The audiences are different. The content, the intent of the show is different. Stern can say anything he wants, and God bless him. Brian Williams would be unwise to run Howard Stern's program in his time slot. That said, our culture is by and large too vulgar, too angry, too coarse. And we could all benefit, I think, from trying to find ways to express ourselves without denouncing that politician X should be made to eat waste or whatever Martin Bashir said, things like that. There's no need to degenerate the national conversation that way. And when you do it, it makes you look stupid, no matter where you stand on the spectrum.
It almost self-regulates and there's a point of diminishing returns in some respects, and certainly the censoring that these anchors Martin Bashir gets is, I think, where the point of diminishing returns is. But in Howard Stern's case, I mean, he was regulated by the FCC, so he just said, in a sense, I'll take my ball and go someplace else. So he started saying, right, now I can go over, he can say whatever he wants, and, nobody cares, how vulgar, how, what he says anymore. Whereas when he was on, when he was getting fined, he was getting fined almost daily. Well, I'm being a little facetious there, but he was getting fined when he was on the public airways because he was saying things. But then again, you wonder, the people that are listening to him, they obviously want to hear those things. So you go over to the other place, and everyone wants to hear those 7 words. You can hear them as much as you want from his voice.
That's his business model. That's what he's there to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's his brand, right?
Yep.
Okay. Final thoughts. Anything that I'm missing? Ed, you already gave us a big boom with that Defense Authorization Act that was passed. Anything else that we're not talking about that I'm missing? You've got 30 seconds.
The pen is mightier than the drone missile attack. On December 28th, investigative journalist Glenn Greenwald, who's been working with Edward Snowden on releasing NSA metadata surveillance secrets, delivered a keynote address to the Hackers Convention in Hamburg, Germany, to a live audience of over 6,000 attendees. I highly recommend it. Look it up. It's very, very captivating. Okay. At the very end of the address, though, he answered a question about what will make government policies change. And he said, when we find a way to put them, the government, in a position that it's not we who are in fear of them, but they who are in fear of us, then policies will change. A light bulb went off in my head. He was channeling Thomas Jefferson, who once said that when government fears the people, there's liberty. And when the people fear the government, there's tyranny.
Okay. Rich Rubino, good final thought, Ed.
Yes, we recently heard Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. They asked him how long he wants to stay as Senate Majority Leader, and he essentially said 8 more years. Now that would tie him with Mike Mansfield, who served for 16 years as the Senate Majority Leader and Senate Minority Leader. Now what's interesting is Harry Reid is not particularly popular in his home state. In fact, last time the fact that he had Sharon Engel as his opponent, who called for Second Amendment remedies, was part of the reason that that and a great turnout effort by the Reid campaign was part of the reason why Reid won. Now, if he wants to stay as the leader of his party, not only does he have to have unity in his caucus, voting for him, but he also has to win re-election in 2016. And there is Joe Heck, who represents the 3rd Congressional District of Nevada, a somewhat moderate to conservative Republican with a military background, and he's going to be running for re-election. Now, it is in the best possible interest, and by the way, this is a district that has about 100,000 more Democrats than Republicans. It is in Harry Reid's best possible interest to get Joe Heck to dislodge him from power now. So watch this congressional race. Watch Harry Reid go out full throttle to try to get Joe Heck out now, so he does not try to challenge him in 2016. Because if Harry Reid is a legitimate challenger in 2016, there is a very good possibility that Harry Reid loses and does not become tied with Mike Mansfield.
Okay, Rich Rubino, Tom Farmer.
Yeah, Harry Reid's going to be majority leader for about 8 more months, 10 more months, not 8 more years. So,
the majority or minority leader, the leader of his party, I meant.
Yeah, I would say majority, no. Let me tell you this. The New York Times ran an editorial this morning saying Ed Snowden has performed a terrific national service and he deserves clemency. I almost fell out of my chair. 6-7 months ago, when the Snowden thing broke, the institutional press, the establishment press, crucified him. There were people on, David Gregory was on NBC suggesting he should be brought up on charges. The press couldn't do enough to delegitimize him because they're so bent on protecting orthodoxy they couldn't stand any challenge. Now that it's apparent it's a real story, they're coming around and trying to be heroic and say, oh yes, he's performed a national service and he's heroic. Where were you when we needed you? The press has been no hero throughout this Snowden affair. The press has made things worse by being so skeptical for so long that this is important, and I can't stand it.
Okay. All right. That's something to think about. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Just a note to our viewers on live stream, thank you so much for watching. We're here every Thursday at 7 p.m. Also, check out some past episodes on YouTube on the Esther Vida channel, but we also have a Politics is Sexy Facebook page. Come visit us. Drop your point. Hi, Jeannie. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Ed Rombach, Rich Rubino. Oh, Tom Farmer, your little toy. Oh, cute.
This is my son.
What's his name? Remind me.
I can't remember what his name is. He eats all my potato chips.
I'm going to go back to blowing my nose. I'm glad I survived this. You guys are the best. Have a good night, and I'll see you next week on another edition of Politics is Sexy. Good night, everyone.
Good night.